Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're going deep into neural networks this time, specifically something called the transformer architecture.
Ah,
You want
yes.
to know how computers are starting to understand us so well?
Right.
Well, this Google AI paper, attention is all you need. That's where it all began, right?
Yeah,
Kind of changed everything for how we process language.
it really did. It's fascinating how the transformer lets computers think almost like we do, you know?
Okay, so before we get into all the nitty-gritty of the transformer, let's talk about what came before. The paper mentions RNNs, recurrent neural networks. What were the problems with those that made something like the transformer necessary?
Well, imagine trying to understand a story by reading one word at a time.
Okay.
That's basically how RNNs worked.
Yeah.
Super slow and inefficient, especially for longer pieces of text.
So like tunnel vision, just focusing on one word and not the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, they couldn't really see the connections between words that were far apart.
Got it. So that's where the transformer comes in, right?
Yeah.
With its attention thing.
Yeah.
It can see the whole sentence at once.
Precisely. The transformer can look at all the words in a sentence simultaneously, so it gets the context and the relationships much better.
That makes a lot of sense. Like when we read, we're not just staring at each word in isolation. It's about how they all fit together, right?
Right. Think about it. When you're reading a sentence, some words just jump out as more important to understanding a whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
The transformer does that too, figures out which parts of what it's reading are most important and focuses on those.
So it's like it's actually paying attention to what matters, not just treating everything equally.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But how does it actually do that paying attention thing? The paper mentions scaled dot product attention. Sounds a bit intimidating.
It might sound complex, but the idea is pretty simple. Imagine you have a question that's your query. Then you've got a ton of information in front of you. The transformer compares your question to each piece of information it's key to see how relevant it is.
Oh, okay. So it's like if I'm looking for a specific topic in a book and I'm checking the index to see which pages are relevant.
Perfect analogy. The more relevant something is to your question, the more attention the transformer pays to it.
I'm starting to get it. Focusing on what matters, not just blindly processing everything. But then the paper also talks about multiple attention heads. What's that about?
Good question. Imagine different people reading the same sentence. One person might focus on the verbs, another on the nouns, another on the overall mood.
So like multiple perspectives.
Exactly. Multi-head attention lets the transformer do that. Look at things from different angles, get a more complete understanding.
So it's not just about knowing what the words are, but how they all work together, right? What
Yeah.
they mean in that specific sentence.
You got it. And that's super important for things like translation, where the same word can mean different things depending on what's around it.
This is all starting to click now. But here's something I'm still not clear on. The transformer is looking at all these words at once, so how does it keep track of the order they're in?
Ah, that's where positional encodings come in. It's like giving each word a specific address within the sentence. So even though it's processing everything in parallel, it still knows the original order.
Hold on. So without these encodings, the transformer wouldn't know the difference between the cat sat on the mat and the mat sat on the cat.
You got it. Position is crucial for meaning.
It's like if you had a letter with all the words in order, but all the spaces were gone. Tough to read, huh?
Exactly.
This is all fascinating. So we're ditching step-by-step processing, using attention to find what's important, and even keeping track of word order. But why is this new way of doing things such a big deal?
Well, compared to the old RNNs, there are three big advantages that the transformer brings to the table: computational complexity, parallelization, and path length. So computational complexity, it's basically how much brain power the model needs to do its job. And the transformer is way more efficient than RNNs, especially with those long sentences we talked about.
It's like it's using its brain power more strategically.
Yeah.
Getting more bang for its buck.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk about parallelization. Imagine you have a team working on a project.
Okay.
If everyone's waiting for the person before them to finish, it'll take forever, right?
Yeah.
But if everyone can work at the same time, things move much faster.
Got it. So RNNs were like that first team, slow and step-by-step. But the transformer is more like a well-oiled machine, everyone working in parallel.
Exactly. And that's one reason it can handle those longer sentences so well.
Okay, makes sense. Now, what about that third advantage you mentioned, path length? What does that even mean for language?
Think of it this way. In a long sentence, you might have words that are related, even though they're far apart. For RNNs, the information about those words has to travel through every word in between, like taking the scenic route.
A long and winding road.
Yeah, but the transformer, because it can see all the words at once, it creates a shortcut between those related words.
So it can spot those connections much easier, even when there's a lot of other words in the way.
Exactly. And this is super important for things like translation, where the word order might be totally different in the original language.
Okay, so the transformer is faster, more efficient, better at handling these long-range connections. Sounds like it's got it all figured out. But you mentioned earlier that even the transformer has some limitations, right? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Of course. So while it's amazing at seeing the big picture and making those long-range connections, sometimes it misses the finer details. It's like admiring a painting from afar. You see the overall composition, the colors, but you might miss those tiny brushstrokes.
So it might not pick up on the subtle nuances of individual words or phrases.
Exactly. And another limitation is that even though it's more efficient than RNNs, it still needs a lot of computing power, especially for really long chunks of text. It's always a balancing act between power and efficiency.
It sounds like finding that balance is a constant challenge for researchers. Speaking of which, the paper mentions ways to potentially improve the transformer, like experimenting with different numbers of attention heads and different ways to encode position.
Right, and their findings were really interesting. Using multiple attention heads instead of just one made a huge difference in the transformer's ability to understand the relationships between words. Remember our analogy about different people focusing on different parts of a sentence?
Yeah, different perspectives.
More heads means more perspectives.
Gotcha. What about those experiments with positional encodings? Anything surprising there?
You know, what they found was that the specific way they encoded position wasn't as important as simply having some way to represent it. So giving each word a number, a color, a unique symbol. The key is just giving the transformer that information about word order.
It's like those numbers on a paint-by-numbers canvas. Don't change the final picture, but they're essential for creating it.
Love that analogy.
It's so cool to see how they're constantly tweaking and improving it.
Yeah.
But the paper also hints at using this tech for more than just text, right? Images, audio, video.
Yeah.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. Imagine a model that can understand and generate not just language, but visual and auditory information too. AI that can interact with the world in a much richer way.
So many possibilities. Like imagine AI that can describe what's happening in a photo or summarize a movie just by watching it.
Exactly. And think about the creative potential. AI composing music, creating 3D animations, even writing whole screenplays.
The possibilities are endless, but it's also a little intimidating, you know? AI creating art and media that could rival our own.
It's a powerful technology, no doubt. And with that comes responsibility. As we develop these AI systems, we have to think about their impact on society.
We have to make sure they're used ethically, for good. It's not just about the tech itself, it's about how we shape its future.
Couldn't agree more. And it's a conversation we need to start having now while this tech is still evolving.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. The paper also talks about how the transformer was tested on this thing called parsing. You mentioned earlier that it did surprisingly well, even with limited training data. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Remember, parsing is all about analyzing the grammatical structure of sentences, which can get really complex. While the transformer, because it's so good with those long-range dependencies, turns out to be really good at parsing. Even beat out some of the more established methods, and it did all that with less data to learn from.
It's a fast learner, picking up on grammar even with limited exposure.
Yeah, and it achieved these results without much tweaking specifically for parsing. Imagine how well it could do with some fine-tuning.
Wow, that's impressive. So, faster, more efficient, more versatile. Sounds like the transformer is a total game changer for language processing. And it's not just about text. It could change how we interact with images, sound, video.
It's an exciting time to be following this field, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with the transformer and this whole attention idea.
Before we wrap things up, I'm curious about the datasets used in these parsing experiments. The paper mentions the Wall Street Journal portion of the Pentree Bank, and then this other, much larger dataset used in a semi-supervised setting. Can you explain the difference between those approaches?
Of course. The Wall Street Journal portion of the Pentree Bank, it's a pretty small data set, only around 40,000 sentences. Training a model on something that small is like giving it a limited vocabulary. It's a test of how efficiently it can learn.
It's like seeing how well it performs with a limited budget of information.
Precisely. But then that semi-supervised setting, with over 17 million sentences, that's like giving the model a huge vocabulary. It shows researchers how well the model scales when you give it tons of data.
It's like the difference between someone who's only read a few books and someone who's spent years in the library soaking up every word.
That's a great way to put it. And the cool thing is, the transformer did well in both scenarios. Shows how adaptable it is, able to learn from both small and large data sets.
That's pretty amazing. It's like the transformer is a jack of all trades when it comes to language. But I think it's time for us to broaden our perspective a bit. Let's consider some of the bigger implications of this technology.
Yes, let's think about what the transformer's success means for the future of AI and how it might affect our lives.
So we've been exploring this whole transformer thing, right? Seeing how it changed the game for language processing. Bringing in this attention concept. It's kind of like how our own brains work.
And you've been digging into the research, seeing how it blows past those older models, especially for tasks like translation and parsing. It's some seriously impressive stuff.
It really is. But you know what I find most fascinating? This idea that the transformer could be used for so much more than just words. Like the paper mentioned images, audio, video. Almost like it could be the key to AI that can experience the world more like we do.
It's a huge leap, no question. We're talking about AI that can understand not just what's being said, but also what's seen, heard, even felt, potentially.
So instead of having separate AI for different types of data, one for text, one for images, so on, we could have this one super AI that can do it all.
That's the ultimate goal, right? And the Transformer seems perfect for that, with its parallel processing power. Imagine robots that can understand instructions with both language and visual cues.
Or in healthcare, AI analyzing medical images, patient records, research papers, all at the same time for better diagnoses and treatments. It could revolutionize so many fields.
Absolutely. And the creative applications are just as mind-blowing. AI composing music for a specific painting or generating 3D animations from a screenplay. The possibilities are endless.
It's incredible, but also a little daunting, to be honest. We're talking about AI that could create art and media that's as good as or even better than what humans can do.
It's powerful, no doubt. And we have to remember, with great power comes great responsibility. As we build these advanced AI systems, we need to be really careful about their impact on society.
We need to ensure they're developed and used ethically, with safeguards against misuse. It's not just about the technology. It's about guiding its future for the benefit of everyone.
I couldn't agree more. It's a conversation we need to have right now as this technology is rapidly evolving.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the transformer architecture. We've explored a lot of ground from the technical nuts and bolts to the broader implications. And it's clear that this technology has the potential to reshape our world in profound ways.
It's a true breakthrough. And for those listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a good understanding of how it works, why it matters, and what the future might hold.
This is just the beginning, though. Researchers are going to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the transformer, so who knows what amazing discoveries are still to come. Stay curious, keep exploring, and let's see what the future holds.